Finally, the old man is gone. Quentin's voice echoed through the hospital hallway. He stood outside the private hospital room, phone pressed to his ear, wearing a black suit that cost $5,000. His voice was loud and excited, like someone who had just won a prize. "Yes, Mother. He's really dead this time. The doctors confirmed it. Total organ failure. He's gone." Quentin laughed, a cold, happy laugh that didn't sound sad at all. Inside the room, Harlan Kingsley lay perfectly still on the white hospital bed. Tubes and wires connected his body to quiet machines. His chest didn't move up and down. His eyes were closed. The monitor beside him showed a flat green line with no beeps, no sounds of life. The doctors had announced it an hour ago. "We're very sorry. Mr. Kingsley has passed away. His organs have stopped working. There's nothing more we can do." But what the family didn't know, what nobody knew except one doctor, was that Harlan could hear everything, every word, every laugh, every cruel truth. His mind was awake, trapped inside a body that wouldn't move. He couldn't open his eyes. He couldn't lift a finger. He couldn't scream or cry or tell them to stop, but he could hear. He heard it all. Hello, friends. Welcome to our story. Before we start, please like this video and subscribe. Also tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? New York, Canada, maybe South Africa or Jamaica. We want to know. Harlan Kingsley was very, very rich. He owned factories that made clothes and toys. He owned big ships that carried goods across the ocean. He had buildings in every city and enough money to buy 100 houses. People called him the boss because he was powerful and smart. But now, Harlan was 72 years old, and he was tired. Not tired from working, tired from something much worse. He was tired of wondering if anyone in his family truly loved him. One quiet evening, Harlan sat alone in his big office at home. The room was filled with awards and certificates on the walls. There were pictures of him shaking hands with presidents and famous people. Outside the window, the city lights sparkled like diamonds. But Harlan wasn't looking at any of those things. He was looking at an old photograph in his hands. The picture showed him as a young man, smiling and happy, standing next to a beautiful woman holding a baby. That woman was his first wife, Lydia. She had loved him when he was poor and had nothing. She had believed in him when nobody else did. She had died 20 years ago, and he still missed her every day. The baby in the picture was Serena, his youngest daughter. Harlan sighed deeply and set the picture down on his desk. "Who really loves me now?" he whispered to himself. "If I died tomorrow, would they be sad? Or would they celebrate?" It was a terrible question for a father to ask. But Harlan had eyes. He had ears. He knew what was happening in his own house. He thought about his wife, Vivian. She was his second wife, the one he married 10 years after Lydia died. Vivian was beautiful and sophisticated, but she was cold. She lived in the same house, but felt like a stranger. She loved parties and jewelry and expensive dresses. But did she love him? Harlan couldn't remember the last time she had touched his hand or asked how he was feeling. He thought about his son, Quentin, who was 35 years old. Quentin was always angry and impatient, always demanding money for new business ideas that never worked. Quentin walked around the house like he already owned it. He checked his father's health every morning, but Harlan knew why. Quentin was counting the days, waiting for him to die. He thought about his son, Preston, who was 32. Preston was different from Quentin. He was quiet and smiled a lot, but his smiles never reached his eyes. Preston was always writing in his notebook, always planning something in secret. Harlan had built his fortune by understanding people, and he knew that Preston was dangerous, the kind of person who waited and watched and then struck when you least expected it. He thought about his daughter, Brielle, who was 28. Brielle only called him when she needed money for shopping or trips. She spent her days taking pictures of herself and posting them on the internet. She wore so much jewelry that she jingled when she walked. She treated the mansion like a hotel and Harlan like a bank machine. Then he thought about Serena. Sweet, quiet Serena, who was 24 years old. She was the only one who sat with him at breakfast. The only one who asked how he felt and actually waited for a real answer. The only one who remembered his birthday without being reminded. But even Serena seemed sad and distant, like she knew the rest of the family didn't care, and it broke her heart. Harlan's chest felt heavy with sadness. He had worked his whole life to build an empire. He had given his family everything: money, houses, cars, education, opportunities. And what had he received in return? Nothing but cold greed and impatient waiting. Suddenly, he had an idea. It was a strange idea, maybe even a crazy one. But Harlan had learned something important in his 72 years. If you want to know the truth about people, don't listen to their words. Watch what they do when they think no one is looking. He picked up his private phone, the one only 3 special people had the number for, and dialed. Dr. Harrington speaking. A calm voice answered. Alexander, it's me, Harlan, he said quietly. I need your help with something important, something unusual. Can you come to my house tomorrow morning? Come early before anyone wakes up. There was a pause. Dr. Harrington had been Harlan's personal doctor and friend for 30 years. He knew Harlan well enough to hear the seriousness in his voice. Of course, Harlan. Is everything all right? Not really, Harlan admitted. But I have a plan. I need to test my family. I need to see who truly loves me and who is just waiting for my money. I'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Harrington said without hesitation. The next morning, before the sun came up, Dr. Harrington arrived at the mansion through the back entrance. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He carried a small medical bag. Harlan met him in the office and closed the door carefully. Thank you for coming, Alexander, Harlan said, offering him coffee. Dr. Harrington sat down, looking concerned. Tell me everything, Harlan. What's troubling you? Harlan took a deep breath. I want to fake my death. I want you to tell my family that I've collapsed and died. I need to see how they react. I need to know if any of them will grieve for me, or if they'll just start dividing up my money. Dr. Harrington's eyes widened in shock. Harlan, that's an extreme thing to do. I know, Harlan said firmly. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was strong. But I built everything from nothing, Alexander. I worked day and night for 50 years, and now I'm old, and I think, no, I know that my own family is just counting the days until I'm gone. I need to know the truth before I die for real. I need to know if there's even one person who will miss me. Dr. Harrington was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his old friend and saw the pain in his eyes. Finally, he nodded slowly. All right, I'll help you. But Harlan, we must be very, very careful. What you're planning is complicated and dangerous. I understand the risks, Harlan said. He pulled out some papers from his desk drawer. There's one more thing. I'm calling my lawyer, Mr. Whitaker. I want to hide most of my money in secret accounts. If anyone tries to steal from me or spend my money while I'm dead, they won't find it. The hidden money will be safe. That's wise, Dr. Harrington agreed. When do you want to do this? Soon, Harlan said. Very soon. An hour later, Mr. Whitaker arrived. He was Harlan's trusted lawyer, a short man with glasses and a briefcase full of important papers. He had worked for Harlan for 25 years and had never betrayed his trust. Harlan explained the plan. Mr. Whitaker adjusted his glasses and looked at Harlan seriously. Mr. Kingsley, I've worked for you for a long time. I've seen many families fight over money when someone dies. What you're planning? It's unusual, but I think it's smart. A hard test, but a good one. Will you help me? Harlan asked. Of course, Mr. Whitaker said. I'll move most of your money today into private accounts. No one will know about it except us three. Perfect, Harlan said. He felt a strange mixture of sadness and determination. Let's plan for 3 days from now. I'll collapse at dinner. Alexander, you'll examine me and tell everyone I'm dead. We'll take my body to the hospital, and then we'll watch. We'll see who they really are. Over the next 3 days, Harlan watched his family carefully. He said nothing about his plan. Everything seemed normal on the surface. At breakfast, Vivian read fashion magazines and ignored him. Quentin made phone calls about business deals that never seemed to work out. Preston wrote in his notebook and smiled his fake smile. Brielle took pictures of her food before eating it. Only Serena sat beside him, quietly reading and occasionally asking if he wanted more coffee. Harlan's heart grew heavier each day, but he didn't change his mind. He needed to know the truth. On the third evening, the family gathered for dinner as usual. The dining room was huge with a long table that could seat 20 people. Crystal glasses sparkled under a giant chandelier. The food was expensive and beautifully prepared. Harlan looked around the table at each person. This might be the last dinner he ever had with them as Harlan Kingsley, the living father. After tonight, everything would change. Is something wrong, Father? Preston asked, noticing Harlan staring. No, Harlan said quietly. I was just thinking about family, about what really matters. Vivian barely looked up from her phone. That's nice, dear. Quentin checked his watch. Are we going to eat or philosophize? Brielle laughed at something on her screen. Only Serena put down her book and looked at her father with concern. Dad, are you feeling okay? I'm fine, sweetheart. Harlan lied. Just fine. But he wasn't fine. His heart was breaking. After dinner, Harlan went to his bedroom. Dr. Harrington was already there, waiting in the shadows. He had come through the back entrance of the mansion, just as they had planned. No one in the family knew he was there. Are you ready? The doctor asked softly. Harlan nodded. Let's do it. Let's find out who they really are. Dr. Harrington opened his medical bag and pulled out a small syringe. This will slow your heartbeat and breathing to almost nothing. You'll appear dead for several hours, but you'll be able to hear everything around you. It's completely safe, but Harlan, you might hear things that hurt you very badly. I know, Harlan whispered, but I have to know the truth. He laid down on his bed. Dr. Harrington injected the medicine into his arm. It will take about 10 minutes to work fully, the doctor explained. When you collapse, your body will seem lifeless. Your family will rush you to the hospital. I'll meet you there and examine you in front of everyone. Then I'll announce that you've died. After that, we watch and wait. Harlan felt the medicine starting to work. His body began to feel heavy and strange. His eyelids drooped. Alexander, he whispered, thank you for being a real friend. Rest now, Dr. Harrington said gently. When you wake up, you'll know the truth. I hope you're wrong about them. Dr. Harrington checked Harlan's pulse one last time, then quietly packed his medical bag. He slipped out of the bedroom, down the back stairs, and out through the servants' entrance. No one saw him leave. As far as the family knew, he had never been there at all. 10 minutes later, Harlan felt his body grow completely still. His heart slowed to barely a beat. His breathing became so shallow that it was almost invisible. He tried to move his hand, but it wouldn't respond. He tried to open his eyes, but they stayed closed. He was trapped inside his own body, awake but unable to move. Then he heard a sound, a soft thump. It was his own body sliding off the bed onto the floor. Footsteps rushed down the hallway. His bedroom door burst open. "Father! Father!" It was Serena's voice filled with panic. More footsteps came running. Voices shouted over each other. What happened? That was Vivian. "He's not breathing," Serena cried. "Someone call an ambulance. Is he dead?" Quentin's voice sounded more curious than worried. "Move. Let me check." Preston pushed forward. Harlan felt hands touching his neck, his wrist searching for a pulse. He wanted to tell them he was okay, but his mouth wouldn't move. His body wouldn't respond. "I can't find a heartbeat." Preston announced, "Call 911 now. I'm calling." Brielle shrieked, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Hurry!" Serena was crying, "Please, Dad! Please wake up!" Within minutes, Harlan heard sirens. Paramedics rushed into the room. He felt himself being lifted onto a stretcher. Voices talked quickly, using medical words he couldn't quite understand through the fog in his brain. No pulse detected. Pupils non-responsive. Possible cardiac arrest. We need to move him now. The stretcher rolled fast through the mansion. Harlan could hear his family's footsteps running alongside it. "I'm riding with him," Serena insisted. "We'll follow in the car," Vivian said, her voice shaking but controlled. Harlan felt the stretcher being loaded into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut. The siren wailed. The vehicle sped through the streets. Inside his frozen body, Harlan's mind was awake and alert. He could hear everything. The beeping of machines, the radio crackling with medical codes, Serena sobbing beside him. "Please don't die, Dad," she whispered, holding his hand. "Please, I'm not ready to lose you. Please." Her tears fell on his hand. Harlan wanted to squeeze her fingers to tell her not to cry, but he couldn't move. He could only listen. The ambulance arrived at the hospital. Doors opened. The stretcher rolled fast through bright hallways. Doctors and nurses surrounded him, shouting instructions. Male, 72 years old, no pulse, not breathing. Get him to the emergency room. "Where's Dr. Harrington?" "Page Dr. Harrington immediately." They rolled Harlan into a private room. Hands moved over his body, attaching wires and tubes. Machines beeped all around him. Then Harlan heard a familiar voice. It was Dr. Harrington, playing his part perfectly. "I'm here. I'm his personal physician. Let me examine him." There was silence as Dr. Harrington checked Harlan's vital signs. Harlan knew what his friend would find, or rather, what he wouldn't find. Finally, Dr. Harrington spoke, his voice heavy with fake sadness. "I'm very sorry Mr. Kingsley has passed away. Total organ failure. His heart has stopped. There's nothing more we can do." "No!" Serena screamed. "No, that can't be true. Check again, please." "I'm so sorry," Dr. Harrington repeated gently. "He's gone." Harlan heard Serena collapse into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. He heard Vivian gasp. He heard footsteps as the rest of his family entered the room. And then he heard Quentin's phone ring. Quentin stepped out into the hallway to answer it. That's when Harlan heard the words that would haunt him. "Finally, The old man is gone. Quentin's voice echoed through the hospital hallway, loud and clear and filled with joy. Yes, Mother. He's really dead this time. The doctors confirmed it. Total organ failure. He's gone. Quentin laughed. A cold, happy laugh that didn't sound sad at all. Inside the room, trapped inside his still body, Harlan's heart broke into a million pieces. The test had begun, and already he knew the answer. Quentin stood in the hospital hallway, his back to the room where his father's body lay. He didn't bother to lower his voice. He didn't think anyone could hear him. Or maybe he just didn't care. "I'm telling you, it's finally over," Quentin said into his phone, his voice excited. 50 years of him controlling everything. 50 years of, "Wait until I say so." "Quentin, you're not ready, Quentin. I built this company, Quentin." "Well, guess what? It's my turn now." Inside the room, Serena pressed her hands over her mouth, trying to muffle her sobs. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her brother was celebrating their father's death. Quentin. Vivian hissed from the doorway. "Lower your voice. People can hear you." "So what?" Quentin laughed. "He's dead, Mother. That we can finally live our lives. No more asking permission. No more waiting. The company is ours now. The money is ours. Everything is ours." Vivian glanced back into the room nervously, then stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind her. But she didn't close it all the way, just enough so that people walking by wouldn't see inside. Harlan lay on the hospital bed, his body frozen and still. But his mind was screaming. Every word Quentin spoke felt like a knife stabbing into his chest. This was his son, his firstborn. The boy he had held as a baby, taught to walk, sent to the best schools, given every opportunity, and Quentin was celebrating his death. Through the crack in the door, Harlan could hear Vivian's voice. Quieter now, but still clear. "Quentin, I understand you're relieved, but we must be careful. There are cameras everywhere. Reporters will come. We need to look proper. We need to look sad." "Fine, fine," Quentin said impatiently. "I'll play the sad son for the cameras. But inside, Mother, I'm throwing a party. We're finally free. Just remember," Vivian said slowly, "the will hasn't been read yet. We need to stay calm until we know exactly what we're getting. Your father was a clever man. We can't celebrate too early." "The old man loved control, but he loved tradition more," Quentin said confidently. "I'm the firstborn son. The company goes to me. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked in powerful families." "Perhaps," Vivian said, "but we should still be careful." Back inside the room, Preston stood near the window, staring out at the city lights. His face showed no expression at all. No sadness, no joy, nothing. He pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket and began writing something down. Brielle sat in a chair across the room, her phone in her hand. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even pretending to look sad. She was typing. Serena looked up from her father's bedside, her eyes red and swollen. "Brielle, what are you doing? Dad just died and you're on your phone." Brielle didn't even look up. "I'm texting my friends. They need to know. Can't that wait?" Serena's voice cracked. "Can't you just be here? Just for a moment?" "Oh, Serena, don't be dramatic," Brielle said, still typing. "What difference does it make? He's gone. Sitting here staring at him won't bring him back." Serena stood up, her whole body shaking with anger and grief. "He was our father. Don't you care at all?" Brielle finally looked up annoyed. "Of course I care. But Serena, let's be honest, father was old. He was sick. This was going to happen eventually. At least he went quickly and didn't suffer for years. He wasn't sick, Serena shouted. He was fine this morning. He was eating breakfast with me. He was talking about planting new roses in the garden. Well, apparently he wasn't fine, Brielle said coldly. She went back to her phone. Look, I'm sad too, okay? But life goes on. We have to be practical now. Serena stared at her sister in disbelief. Practical? Practical? Our father just died. Exactly, Brielle said. And now we need to think about funeral arrangements, and the will reading, and what happens to the company, and the will. Serena's voice was barely a whisper. You're already thinking about the will. Someone has to think about these things, Brielle said defensively. We can't just fall apart. Father would want us to be strong and handle business properly. Serena turned away from her sister, disgusted. She walked back to her father's bedside and took his cold hand in hers. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered. I'm so sorry they're like this. Preston closed his notebook and walked over to stand beside Serena. He put a hand on her shoulder. Serena, I know this is hard for you. You were always Father's favorite. Serena looked up at him with teary eyes. I wasn't his favorite. I just loved him, that's all. Of course, Preston said smoothly. His smile was gentle, but his eyes were cold and calculating. We all loved him in our own ways. Did you? Serena asked quietly. Did you love him, Preston? Or did you just pretend? Preston's smile didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. That's a cruel thing to say. I heard Quentin outside, Serena said, her voice getting stronger. I heard him laughing. I heard him celebrating. And you? You're standing there writing in your notebook like you're at a business meeting, and Brielle is texting her friends and mother. Serena looked toward the door where Vivian was still talking to Quentin in the hallway. Mother hasn't even cried once. People grieve differently, Preston said calmly. This isn't grief. Serena stood up, her hands balled into fists. This is relief. You're all relieved he's dead. The room went silent. Brielle stopped typing. Preston's smile finally faded. Serena, Preston said quietly. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Serena said, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, I'm seeing all of you clearly. You never loved him. You just loved his money. The door opened and Vivian stepped back inside, followed by Quentin. They both wore serious expressions now, like they had put on masks of sadness. Serena, sweetheart, Vivian said in a soft voice. I know you're hurting. We all are. But we need to stay together as a family now. Family? Serena laughed bitterly. We're not a family. We're just people who live in the same house and wait for someone to die so we can split up their money. That's enough, Quentin snapped. You don't get to judge us, Serena. You're the baby of the family. You don't understand how the real world works. I understand perfectly. Serena said, I understand that Dad gave you everything and you gave him nothing back. Not love, not respect, nothing. We gave him plenty. Quentin shot back. We built his company with him. We carried his name. We made him look good. You did nothing, Serena shouted. You failed at every business Dad helped you start. You wasted millions of his dollars. You treated him like an ATM machine. Quentin's face turned red with anger. He took a step toward Serena, but Vivian grabbed his arm. Stop it, both of you, Vivian commanded. Fighting won't change anything. Harlan is gone. We need to focus on what comes next. What comes next? Serena stared at her stepmother. Dad's body is still warm, and you're already talking about what comes next. Vivian's face remained calm and cold. Someone has to be practical, Serena. Someone has to think about the funeral, the company, the assets. Assets, Serena repeated, shaking her head. That's all he was to you. Assets, money, power. Oh, grow up. Brielle snapped from her chair. Yes, father had money. A lot of money. And yes, we're going to inherit it. That's how inheritance works. Serena, stop acting like we're monsters for acknowledging reality. Serena looked around the room at each of them. Quentin with his angry face, Vivian with her cold eyes, Preston with his fake smile, Brielle with her phone. She felt sick. I can't be here, Serena whispered. I can't stand looking at any of you. She turned and ran out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hospital hallway. Let her go, Vivian said. She's always been too emotional, too soft, just like Lydia. She said the name of Harlan's first wife with a hint of disgust. She'll calm down eventually, Preston said, sitting down in the chair Serena had left. Once the shock wears off, Quentin walked over to the bed where his father lay. He stared down at Harlan's still face. For a moment, something almost like regret crossed Quentin's features, but it was gone in a second. The old man looks peaceful, Quentin said. Maybe death was a relief for him too. He worked too hard, worried too much, trusted people too much. He paused. Well, that's over now. Time for a new generation to take over. We should call Mr. Whitaker, Vivian said. Father's lawyer. We need to arrange a meeting about the will. Already done, Preston said, holding up his phone. I texted him 20 minutes ago. He'll meet us tomorrow morning at the house. Tomorrow? Serena had reappeared in the doorway, her face pale. The will reading is tomorrow. Dad just died, and you've already scheduled the will reading. We have to move quickly, Preston explained calmly. The company needs leadership. Employees need to know what's happening. The stock market will react to Father's death. We can't afford to wait. Serena walked slowly back into the room. She looked at her father's body one more time, then at each family member. You're all disgusting, she said quietly. Every single one of you. She turned and left again, this time, not running, just walking slowly like someone in a nightmare. Vivian sighed. She'll come around. She's young. She doesn't understand how the world works yet. Should we go home? Brielle asked. There's nothing more we can do here. Yes, Vivian decided. Let's go. The hospital will handle everything else. We need to rest. Tomorrow will be a very busy day. They filed out of the room one by one, leaving Harlan's body alone with just the beeping machines and the bright fluorescent lights. In the hallway, Dr. Harrington watched them leave. He had been standing in the shadows, listening to everything. His face was sad and disappointed, but not surprised. He waited until they were gone, then walked into the room and closed the door behind him. Harlan, he said quietly, even though he knew Harlan couldn't respond. I'm so sorry, my friend. I'm so sorry. You were right about them. He checked the monitors and made some notes on a clipboard. Then he pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. I'll stay with you tonight, Dr. Harrington said softly. You shouldn't be alone. Not really alone, Serena tried. But well, you heard. Inside his frozen body, Harlan's mind was chaos. Grief, rage, heartbreak. His worst fears had been confirmed. His family, except for Serena, had been waiting for him to die, hoping for it, planning for it. And now they thought he was gone, and they couldn't even wait one night before talking about his money. The medicine would wear off in a few hours. Harlan would wake up. His body would move again. And then came the hard part. Then came the reckoning. The Kingsley mansion was dark and quiet when the family arrived home from the hospital. It was almost midnight. The servants had been told about Harlan's death, and they had left candles burning in the windows as a sign of respect. Vivian walked through the front door first, pulling off her black coat. "Someone turn on the lights," she said tiredly. "I can't stand all these candles. It's too depressing." Quentin flipped the switches. Bright lights flooded the mansion, chasing away the shadows and the somber mood. "That's better," Vivian said. She walked to the living room and sat down on the white leather sofa. What a long, exhausting night. "I'll get us some drinks," Preston offered. He went to the bar in the corner, a beautiful wooden cabinet filled with expensive wines and liquors from around the world. Brielle kicked off her high heels and stretched out on another sofa. Finally, she sighed. "My feet are killing me. These shoes were not made for standing in hospitals." Serena stood in the doorway, watching them. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. They had just come from the hospital, where their father's body lay cold and dead, and they were acting like they had just come home from a party. "Is anyone else hungry?" Quentin asked, loosening his tie. "I'm starving. We didn't eat dinner. There's leftover food in the kitchen." Vivian said, "Tell Sophia to heat something up." Sophia went home. Quentin reminded her. All the servants left after they heard the news. They were crying and everything. He rolled his eyes. So dramatic. "They love Dad," Serena said quietly from the doorway. "Unlike some people in this house." Everyone turned to look at her. "Serena, please," Vivian said with exaggerated patience. "Not again. We're all tired. Let's not fight." "I'm not fighting," Serena said. "I'm just telling the truth." "Your truth," Brielle corrected, examining her fingernails. "Not everyone has to grieve the way you do, Serena. Stop being so judgmental." Preston returned with a bottle of wine and several glasses. He poured the dark red liquid carefully, the wine glugging into each crystal glass. Serena's eyes widened. "You're drinking? You're drinking wine? Dad just died." "Serena, we're adults," Preston said calmly, handing a glass to Vivian. "Having a drink to calm our nerves isn't disrespectful. It's been a shocking, traumatic evening." "A traumatic evening," Serena repeated in disbelief. Quentin was laughing in the hospital hallway. He said he was throwing a party inside. Quentin accepted a glass of wine from Preston and took a long sip. "I was in shock," he said smoothly. "People say strange things when they're in shock. You're taking my words out of context. I heard exactly what you said. Enough." Vivian's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Serena, either sit down and be civil or go to your room. I will not have you attacking your siblings all night." Serena stared at her stepmother. Vivian's face was hard and cold. There was no sadness there, no grief, just annoyance that Serena was making a scene. "Fine," Serena whispered. "I'll go to my room. I can't stand to look at any of you anyway." She turned and ran up the stairs. They could hear her footsteps, then the slam of her bedroom door. Vivian sighed and sipped her wine. That girl has always been too emotional, just like her mother. "Lydia was weak," Quentin said, sitting down and propping his feet up on the coffee table. "Father should have been more careful choosing his wives. At least your practical mother." Vivian smiled slightly. "Someone in this family has to be." Preston sat in Harlan's favorite chair, a large leather armchair that faced the window. It had always been Harlan's spot. No one else ever sat there. But now Preston settled into it comfortably, swirling his wine. So Preston said casually, Should we talk about tomorrow? The will reading? Quentin said immediately. He leaned forward, suddenly alert. What time is Mr. Whitaker coming? 10 o'clock, Preston replied. I told him we wanted to handle it quickly. No point dragging it out. Good, Quentin said. He took another drink of wine, a bigger gulp this time. The sooner we know what we're getting, the sooner we can move forward. What do you think is in the will? Brielle asked, sitting up with interest. I mean, Father had to have left us something specific, right? Not just divide everything equally or something boring like that. I'm the oldest son, Quentin said confidently. Tradition says the company goes to me. Father was old-fashioned about some things. He believed in legacy and passing the business to the firstborn. Don't be so sure, Preston said quietly. Father was unpredictable sometimes. Quentin's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Preston said with his fake smile. Just that we shouldn't assume anything until we hear the actual will. Well, I'm getting the beach house, Brielle announced. Father always said I could have it someday. I've already been planning how to redecorate it. I'm thinking all white furniture, very modern, very Instagram-worthy. The man isn't even buried yet, Vivian interrupted. And you're redecorating his properties. Well, we have to think practically, Brielle said, echoing her mother's earlier words. Life goes on, right? That's what you always say, Mother. Vivian nodded slowly. Yes, life does go on. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. Your father built an empire. Now it's our responsibility to maintain it. To grow it or sell it, Quentin said. Everyone turned to look at him. Sell it? Vivian asked. The company? Why not? Quentin shrugged. Father spent his whole life chained to that company, working day and night, stressing about every little thing. Maybe it's time to cash out, sell the company for billions, divide the money, and actually enjoy our lives. Father would hate that idea, Preston said. Father is dead, Quentin said bluntly. What he wants doesn't matter anymore. A heavy silence filled the room. Even Brielle looked uncomfortable. Then Quentin smiled and raised his glass. I'm sorry that sounded harsh, but it's true, isn't it? We've spent our whole lives living by Father's rules, doing what Father wanted, going where Father said, working when Father demanded. Well, now we're free. Free to make our own choices. Free to live our own lives. Preston raised his glass slowly. To freedom, he said quietly. To freedom, Brielle echoed, lifting her glass. Vivian hesitated, then raised her glass as well to the future. They clinked their glasses together and drank. None of them noticed that Serena had come back downstairs. She stood in the shadows near the staircase, watching them through the doorway. Tears streamed silently down her face. They were toasting like this was a celebration. Her father was dead, and they were celebrating. Serena turned and climbed back up the stairs, moving quietly so they wouldn't hear her. She went into her bedroom and locked the door behind her. She walked to her dresser and picked up a framed photograph. It showed her as a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sitting on her father's shoulders. Harlan was young in the photo, probably in his 50s, with less gray in his hair. He was smiling, really smiling, not the tight, controlled smile he wore in later years. And little Serena was laughing, her arms spread wide like she was flying. I miss you, Daddy, Serena whispered to the photograph. I miss you so much already. And I'm so sorry they're like this. I'm so sorry you spent your whole life working for people who didn't even love you. She set the photo down and lay on her bed, curling up in a ball. Through the floor, she could hear voices downstairs. Laughter, the clinking of glasses. The celebration continued. Downstairs, Quentin poured himself another glass of wine. He was on his third glass now, and his face was flushed. "You know what Father's problem was?" he said, his words slightly slurred. "He never knew how to enjoy life. Always working, working, working. Always serious, always controlling everything." "He built everything we have," Preston reminded him. "And we're grateful for that," Quentin said quickly. "Of course, we're grateful. But building an empire and running an empire are two different things. Father was a builder. I'm a leader. It's different skill sets," Preston said non-committally. He was still sitting in Harlan's chair, watching Quentin with his calculating eyes. Vivian checked her phone. "I should call some people," she said. "Spread the news properly. The mayor, the governor, some business associates. They need to hear it from us before they read it in the newspapers tomorrow." "Will there be a big funeral?" Brielle asked. "I mean, Father was famous, important. There will probably be thousands of people." "We'll have a private family service," Vivian decided. "Then a larger public memorial later. We need to control the narrative, manage the image." "When should we schedule it?" Preston asked. "Not until after the will reading," Quentin said firmly. "We need to know where we stand first, need to know who's in charge." He looked directly at Preston. "Need to make sure everyone knows the proper order of things." Preston smiled his cold smile. "Of course, brother, whatever you say." The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Brielle yawned dramatically. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed. We have a big day tomorrow." She stood up, grabbed her shoes, and headed for the stairs. "Good night, everyone. Try not to fight while I'm sleeping." She disappeared upstairs. Vivian stood as well. "I'm going to make those phone calls from my room. Quentin, Preston, try to be civil to each other. We need to present a united front tomorrow." "Of course, Mother," they both said at the same time. Vivian gave them a warning look, then left the room. Quentin and Preston sat in silence for a moment, just the two brothers alone. Finally, Quentin spoke. "You've been awfully quiet tonight, Preston. What are you thinking about?" "Many things," Preston said softly. He pulled out his small notebook and pen. "For example, I'm thinking about how Father changed his banking passwords 3 weeks ago. I'm thinking about how he moved money around between accounts. I'm thinking about how there might be surprises in his financial records." Quentin sat up straight, suddenly very alert despite the wine. "What kind of surprises?" "I don't know yet," Preston said, writing something in his notebook. "But Father was acting strange lately. Secretive. I noticed it." "So what?" Quentin said nervously. "He was always secretive about business." "This was different," Preston said. He looked up from his notebook, his eyes sharp. It was like he was preparing for something, or testing something. "You're being paranoid," Quentin said, but his voice lacked confidence. "Maybe," Preston agreed. He closed his notebook and stood up. "Or maybe Father was smarter than we thought, smarter than we gave him credit for." He walked toward the stairs. "Sleep well, brother. Tomorrow we'll find out the truth." He disappeared upstairs, leaving Quentin alone in the living room. Quentin sat there for a long moment, staring at his wine glass. Suddenly, he didn't feel like celebrating anymore. Preston's words had planted a seed of doubt in his mind. What if Father had changed his will? What if there were conditions? What if the money wasn't just going to be handed over? "No," Quentin muttered to himself. "I'm the oldest son. The company is mine. It has to be mine." But as he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, He couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his stomach. In the hospital, Harlan's body still lay on the white bed. Dr. Harrington had dimmed the lights and pulled a chair close. He was reading a medical journal, but mostly he was just keeping watch over his old friend. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Harrington noticed something. One of Harlan's fingers twitched, just slightly, barely visible, but it moved. Dr. Harrington immediately stood up and checked Harlan's vital signs. His heart rate was increasing. His breathing was getting stronger. The medicine was wearing off. Harlan was waking up. "Doctor." Harrington leaned close and whispered, "Harlan, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." Harlan's fingers squeezed weakly at first, then stronger. "Good," Dr. Harrington said softly. "Don't try to move too much yet. Let the medicine work its way out of your system. Just rest. You're safe. I'm here." Harlan's eyes fluttered open. At first, they were unfocused and confused. Then, clarity returned. He looked at Dr. Harrington with eyes full of pain. Not physical pain, but something much worse. The pain of a broken heart. "I heard everything," Harlan whispered, his voice. "Everything they said. Everything they did." "I know," Dr. Harrington said gently. "I'm so sorry, Harlan." A single tear rolled down Harlan's cheek. Serena was the only one who cried for me. "Yes," Dr. Harrington confirmed. "Serena truly grieved the others." He trailed off, unable to finish. Harlan closed his eyes. More tears came. "What have I done, Alexander? What have I created? I gave them everything, and I turned them into monsters." "You gave them everything, Doctor." Harrington agreed. "But they chose what to do with it. Their greed, their cruelty. That's not your fault, Harlan. That's who they chose to be." Harlan was silent for a long moment. Then his jaw tightened, his hands clenched into fists. When he opened his eyes again, the sadness was still there. But now there was something else too. Determination, anger, purpose. "Tomorrow is the will reading," Harlan said. "Yes, they're expecting to divide my empire." "Yes." Harlan sat up slowly, his body still weak, but his mind sharp and clear. "Then let's give them a will reading they'll never forget." Dr. Harrington smiled slightly. "What do you want to do?" Harlan's eyes gleamed with cold fire. "I want justice. I want truth. I want them to know that I heard every word they said, every laugh, every toast, every cruel, greedy thought." And then, Harlan said quietly, "I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to give my empire to someone who actually deserves it." The sun rose over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a beautiful morning, the kind of morning that felt wrong for a family and morning. In the Kingsley mansion, the house slowly came to life. Vivian was already awake, dressed in an elegant black dress with pearls around her neck. She sat at her vanity mirror, applying makeup carefully. Her reflection showed a woman who looked sad and dignified, exactly the image she wanted to project. She practiced her expression in the mirror. Sad eyes, slight frown, a woman grieving her husband. "Perfect," she whispered to herself. Down the hall, Quentin was on his phone, pacing back and forth in his bedroom. He had barely slept. Preston's words from last night kept echoing in his head. "Yes, I need you to find out everything you can about my father's recent financial activity," Quentin said into the phone. "Bank transfers, account changes, everything. I don't care what it costs. I need that information before 10 o'clock this morning." He hung up and checked his watch. It was 7:30. He had 2.5 hours before the will reading. In another bedroom, Brielle was video calling her best friend Kendra. So, the lawyer is coming this morning, Brielle said, filing her nails while she talked. I'm so nervous. What if father left me less than Quentin? That would be so unfair. I'm his daughter. I should get just as much as the boys. What are you going to wear? Kendra asked through the phone. Black dress, obviously, Brielle said. But designer Chanel. I think I need to look sad, but also sophisticated. There might be photographers at a will reading. You never know. Brielle said father was famous. When rich people die, the media goes crazy. Preston sat at his desk in his bedroom, his laptop open in front of him. He had been awake all night researching and calculating. His notebook was filled with numbers and notes. He had accessed his father's company accounts, the ones he had been secretly monitoring for months. He had passwords and access codes that Harlan didn't know he had. But when Preston tried to check the main accounts this morning, something strange happened. Access denied, Preston whispered, staring at the screen. He tried again. Same message. That's impossible, he muttered. I used these passwords just last week. You tried different accounts. One after another, they were all blocked or showing much lower balances than expected. Preston's calm expression finally cracked. His eyes widened. Where did the money go? Serena had not slept at all. She sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by old photo albums, pictures of her father through the years, young and strong, middle-aged and successful, older and tired. In every photo, he was working, building, creating, giving everything to his family. And what had they given him? Nothing but greed and impatience. Serena wiped her tears and stood up. She walked to her closet and pulled out a simple black dress. Not designer, not fancy, just plain and respectful. As she got dressed, she heard voices downstairs. The family was gathering. Serena took a deep breath. She didn't want to face them, but she had to. She had to be there for her father, even if it was just his memory now. She opened her bedroom door and walked downstairs. In the dining room, Vivian had ordered a big breakfast. Eggs, bacon, pancakes, fresh fruit, orange juice, coffee. The table was full of food. Quentin and Preston were already sitting down, plates in front of them. Eat something, Vivian said, sipping her coffee. We need our strength today. How can you eat? Serena's voice came from the doorway. She stood there staring at them in disbelief. Dad died last night, and you're having a feast, Serena. People still need to eat, Vivian said patiently, like she was talking to a child. Starving ourselves won't bring him back. You're disgusting, Serena whispered. And you're being dramatic, Brielle said, walking in with her phone as always. She grabbed a piece of bacon and bit into it. Seriously, Serena, you need to get a grip. Yes, it's sad. Yes, we miss him. But we're still alive, and we still need to function. Serena felt sick. She turned to leave, but Quentin called out to her. Serena, wait. You should eat something, and you need to be here for the will reading. Why? Serena asked bitterly. So you can see how much money you're getting. So you can celebrate more. Quentin's face hardened. That's not fair, isn't it? Serena's voice rose. I heard you last night, Quentin. All of you drinking wine, toasting to freedom, making plans. Dad's body isn't even cold, and you're already spending his money in your heads. The room went silent. Vivian carefully set down her coffee cup. Serena, I understand you're upset. Don't, Serena interrupted. Don't pretend you understand. Don't pretend any of you care. I saw who you really are last night. I saw the truth. The truth? Preston said quietly. What truth is that, Serena? That none of you loved him? Serena shouted. None of you? You loved his money, his power, his name, but you never loved him. That's not true, Brielle protested weakly. Then why were you texting your friends 5 minutes after he died? Serena demanded. Why was Quentin laughing in the hallway? Why was Preston writing in his notebook about business? Why was Mother talking about what comes next, before Dad's body was even taken away? No one had an answer. That's what I thought, Serena said quietly. She turned and walked toward the library, the one room in the house where she felt close to her father. It was where he used to read, where he kept his favorite books, where he would sit and think. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing hard. On the wall was a large painting of her father, painted when he was 50 years old. Strong, confident, successful. Serena looked up at the painting and whispered, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry they're like this. I wish I could have protected you. I wish I could have made you happy. At exactly 9:30, a car pulled up to the mansion. Mr. Whitaker, Harlan's lawyer, stepped out carrying a large briefcase. He was a serious-looking man with gray hair and glasses. He had worked for Harlan for 25 years and knew all the family's secrets. The butler, an old man named Alfred, who had worked for Harlan for 30 years, opened the door. His eyes were red from crying. Mr. Whitaker, Alfred said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for coming, Alfred, Mr. Whitaker said gently, shaking his hand. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you and Mr. Kingsley were close. He was a good man, Alfred said, wiping his eyes. A very good man, and this family. He stopped himself. I'm sorry. It's not my place. I understand, Mr. Whitaker said quietly. He understood perfectly. He had seen how this family treated Harlan. Alfred led him to the living room where the family was gathered. They all sat up straight when Mr. Whitaker entered, putting on their serious, sad faces. Mr. Whitaker, Vivian said, standing and offering her hand. Thank you so much for coming on such short notice. Mrs. Kingsley, Mr. Whitaker said formally. My condolences. Thank you, Vivian said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, though there were no actual tears. This has been such a difficult time. I'm sure, Mr. Whitaker said dryly. He had been Harlan's lawyer long enough to know exactly what kind of woman Vivian was. Quentin stood and shook Mr. Whitaker's hand firmly. We appreciate you handling this so quickly. I know there's a lot to sort out with the company and the assets. Indeed, Mr. Whitaker said. He looked around the room. Is everyone here? The will reading requires all immediate family members to be present. Serena is in the library, Preston said. I'll get her. He left and returned a moment later with Serena, who looked small and sad. Her eyes were puffy from crying. She sat in a chair far away from the rest of the family. Mr. Whitaker noticed this, but said nothing. He opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. Before we begin, he said, I need to inform you that this will was updated 3 weeks ago. Mr. Kingsley came to my office and made several significant changes. Quentin and Preston exchanged quick glances. Changes? Vivian asked, trying to keep her voice calm. What kind of changes? You'll hear everything shortly, Mr. Whitaker said. He put on his reading glasses. But first, I need to verify identities. This is standard procedure. Vivian Kingsley present. Vivian said Quentin Kingsley. Here, Quentin said. Preston Kingsley present, Preston said. Brielle Kingsley. I'm here, Brielle said, finally putting down her phone. Serena Kingsley. Here, Serena whispered. Mr. Whitaker made notes on his paper. Then he pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and official-looking. "This is the last will and testament of Harlan James Kingsley," Mr. Whitaker announced formally. "Written and sealed on January 7th, 2026 in my office with 2 witnesses present." 3 weeks ago, Serena thought. Dad changed his will just 3 weeks ago. Did he know something was wrong? Did he suspect? "Should I read it now?" Mr. Whitaker asked. "Yes, please," Vivian said. She folded her hands in her lap, the picture of a dignified widow. Quentin leaned forward in his seat, eager and tense. Preston sat very still, his face unreadable. Brielle picked at her fingernails, trying to look bored, but actually very nervous. Serena simply stared at the floor, not caring about money or inheritances. She just missed her father. Mr. Whitaker broke the seal on the envelope and pulled out several pages. He cleared his throat. "I, Harlan James Kingsley, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament," he began reading. The room was completely silent, except for Mr. Whitaker's voice. "First, I want to address my family directly. To Vivian, Quentin, Preston, Brielle, and Serena, you are reading this because I have passed away. I want you to know that I loved each of you, even though that love was not always returned or appreciated." Vivian shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I built my empire from nothing," Mr. Whitaker continued reading. "I worked every day of my life to provide for my family, to give you opportunities, to create a legacy. But in my final years, I began to wonder, did any of you love me? Or did you only love what I could give you?" Quentin's face was turning red. "So, I created a test." Mr. Whitaker read, and everyone in the room suddenly sat up straighter. "A test to see how you would react if I died. A test to reveal your true hearts." "What?" Vivian breathed. Mr. Whitaker looked up from the papers, his expression grave. "There's more, and I think you're all going to want to sit down for this." "We are sitting down," Quentin snapped. "Then hold on tight," Mr. Whitaker said. He looked back at the will and continued reading. "If you are reading this, well, it means my test is complete. It means I faked my death to see how you would respond, and it means the living room door suddenly opened. Everyone turned, and there, standing in the doorway, very much alive, was Harlan Kingsley. It means Harlan said in a strong, clear voice that I heard everything. I saw everything, and now we're going to have a conversation about the truth." Vivian's face went white as a sheet. Quentin stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Preston's mouth dropped open in shock. Brielle screamed, and Serena, sweet Serena, jumped up from her chair and ran to her father, throwing her arms around him. "Dad!" she cried. "You're alive! You're alive!" Harlan hugged his youngest daughter tightly, his eyes filling with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm alive. I'm so sorry I scared you." Serena sobbed into his chest, holding him like she would never let go. The rest of the family just stood there frozen in shock and horror. Harlan looked at each of them over Serena's head. His eyes were hard and cold. "Sit down," he commanded. "All of you. We have a lot to discuss." For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. They all just stared at Harlan like he was a ghost. You're dead," Vivian finally whispered. "The doctor said they said you were dead. The doctor said what I told them to say," Harlan replied calmly. He gently released Serena, though she kept holding his hand tightly, as if afraid he might disappear again. "Dr. Harrington has been my friend for 30 years. He helped me with my test." Test. Quentin's voice was shaky. His face had gone from red to pale. "What test?" "Sit down, Quentin," Harlan repeated. His voice was quiet, but full of authority. "All of you sit down now." Slowly, like puppets on strings, Vivian, Quentin, Preston, and Brielle moved back to their seats. They sat on the edge of the cushions, rigid and scared. Serena sat beside her father, still holding his hand. "Mr." Whitaker stood off to the side, his briefcase closed. He had known about Harlan's plan all along. Harlan remained standing. He looked at each family member one by one, his gaze like ice. "I'm going to tell you a story," Harlan began. "A story about a man who worked his entire life to build something. A man who started with nothing. No money, no connections, no advantages, just hard work and determination." He walked slowly across the room, his hands behind his back. That man built factories and companies. He created jobs for thousands of people. He became successful, wealthy, powerful, and he did it all for one reason: to provide for his family, to give them a better life than he had. Vivian gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles turning white. But as the years passed, Harlan continued. That man began to notice something troubling. His family didn't seem to love him. They seemed to tolerate him. They smiled at him, but the smiles were fake. They said, "I love you." But the words were empty. "Father," Quentin started to speak. "Be quiet." Harlan's voice suddenly thundered through the room. Quentin flinched and went silent. "I'm talking now," Harlan said coldly. "You'll get your turn later. Right now, you're going to listen." He turned to face them all. 3 weeks ago, I realized something. I realized that I had no idea if my family actually loved me or if they were just waiting for me to die so they could take my money. So, I came up with a plan, a test. Harlan pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times. "I have something I want you all to see. Mr. Whitaker, could you connect this to the television?" Mr. Whitaker took the phone and connected it to the large TV mounted on the wall. The screen flickered to life. "What is this?" Vivian asked nervously. "This," Harlan said, "is the truth." He pressed play. The video showed the hospital room from last night. The camera angle was from up in the corner, a security camera that had been recording everything. On the screen, Harlan lay still on the hospital bed, surrounded by machines. The time. Stamp showed 9:47 p.m., right after Dr. Harrington had announced he was dead. Serena could be heard sobbing. "No, no, no, no. That can't be true." "Check again." "Please, Dr. Harrington, check again." Then came the sound of a phone ringing. Quentin's voice. "I need to take this." Footsteps, the door opening. And then, clear as day, Quentin's voice echoing from the hallway. "Finally, the old man is gone." On the screen, the camera had captured audio from both inside the room and the hallway. Every word was recorded. Quentin's face on the TV was full of joy as he laughed into the phone. "Yes, Mother, he's really dead this time." The doctors confirmed it. Total organ failure. He's gone. In the living room, present day, Quentin had gone completely white. He looked like he might throw up. The video continued. It showed Vivian stepping into the hallway saying, "Quentin, lower your voice. People can hear you." Quentin's response, "So what? He's dead. Mother, that we can finally live our lives. No more asking permission. No more waiting. The company is ours now. The money is ours. Everything is ours." Vivian's face on the screen. "Quentin, I understand you're relieved, but we must be careful." Relieved. Harlan paused the video. He looked at Vivian. You understood, he was relieved. That's the word you used when your husband, the man you married, the man you lived with for over 20 years, died. Vivian opened her mouth, but no words came out. Harlan pressed play again. The video showed them returning to the hospital room. It showed Brielle on her phone texting. Serena's voice, "Brielle, what are you doing? Dad just died and you're on your phone." Brielle's response, "I'm texting my friends. They need to know. Can't that wait?" "Oh, Serena, don't be dramatic. What difference does it make? He's gone. Sitting here staring at him won't bring him back." Harlan paused again. He looked at Brielle, who had started crying, but not tears of sadness, tears of shame and fear. "My daughter," Harlan said quietly, couldn't wait 5 minutes before texting her friends. Not to share grief, but to share news like I was a celebrity who had died, not her father. "Dad," Brielle started. "I'm not finished." Harlan cut her off. He fast-forwarded through parts of the video, stopping at certain moments. Preston writing in his notebook, calm and calculating, showing no emotion at all. Serena shouting at her family, "You never loved him, you just loved his money." The family leaving the hospital talking about funeral arrangements and will readings within hours of his supposed death. Finally, Harlan stopped the video, but he wasn't done. "Mr. Whitaker," Harlan said, "please show them the other recordings." Mr. Whitaker pulled out a tablet and set it on the coffee table. He pressed play. This video showed the mansion from last night. Hidden cameras. Harlan had installed them throughout the house weeks ago. The footage showed the family arriving home. Quentin loosening his tie. "Is anyone else hungry?" Preston pouring wine. Vivian practicing her sad face in front of the mirror before coming downstairs. And then, the worst part. All of them toasting with wine glasses. Quentin raising his glass. "We've spent our whole lives living by Father's rules. Well, now we're free. Free to make our own choices. Free to live our own lives. Preston to freedom. Brielle to freedom. Vivian to the future." The sound of glasses clinking together. Harlan turned off the tablet. The room was dead silent. "To freedom," Harlan repeated softly. "To freedom from me. That's what you toasted to hours after I died. Or so you thought. You celebrated your freedom." "Father, you don't understand." Quentin started desperately. "I understand perfectly." Harlan's voice was like thunder again. "I understand that you never loved me. I understand that you've been waiting for years for me to die. I understand that the only thing you care about is my money. That's not true." Vivian stood up, trying to look dignified. "Harlan, you're taking things out of context. We were in shock. People say and do strange things when they're in shock." "Shock." Harlan laughed bitterly. "Vivian, I watched you practice your sad face in the mirror. I heard Quentin celebrating. I saw Preston calmly making plans. I watched Brielle text her friends like I was just some old man she barely knew." He walked closer to them, his eyes blazing. "Do you know what it's like?" Harlan's voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. "Do you know what it's like to lie there unable to move, unable to speak, listening to your own family celebrate your death?" Serena squeezed his hand. She was crying again, but this time not from sadness, from anger at her family. "Dad, I'm so sorry," Serena whispered. "I'm so sorry they hurt you." Harlan touched her cheek gently. "You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. You were the only one who cried for me, the only one who truly grieved, the only one who questioned whether I was really gone." He looked at the others. Serena ran back to the hospital, suspicious that something wasn't right. She was the only one who cared enough to doubt. He turned back to the rest of the family. But the rest of you couldn't wait to divide up my empire. You couldn't wait to sell my company. You couldn't wait to spend my money and live your free lives. Harlan, please. Vivian tried again. Did you ever love me, Vivian? Harlan asked directly. Ever? Even in the beginning? Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Finally, she looked down at the floor. I respected you, but you never loved me. Silence. Answer me, Harlan demanded. No, Vivian whispered. No, I never loved you. I loved what you could provide, the lifestyle, the status. But you were always so cold, so focused on work. How could I love someone who barely noticed I existed? I was building an empire for you, for all of you. Harlan's voice cracked with emotion. We didn't ask you to. Quentin suddenly stood up, angry now instead of scared. We didn't ask to be born into this. You built your empire for yourself, Father, for your ego, for your pride. You wanted to be powerful and important, and you just expected us to be grateful. I gave you everything, Harlan shouted back. You gave us money, Quentin shouted, but you never gave us you. When was the last time you asked about my life, my dreams, my feelings? You just told me I was a disappointment over and over. Because you are a disappointment, Harlan roared. You're lazy. You're entitled. You failed at every single business I helped you start because you don't want to work. You want everything handed to you. Maybe if you believed in me instead of criticizing me constantly, I would have tried harder. Quentin shot back. Father and son stood facing each other, both breathing hard, years of resentment and anger boiling over. And you, Preston? Harlan turned on his second son, so quiet, so calm, always watching, always calculating. Did you think I didn't know you've been stealing from the company? Preston's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. Harlan pulled out more papers from Mr. Whitaker's briefcase. I have bank records, transfer records. You've been siphoning money from company accounts for 2 years. Small amounts carefully hidden. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Preston said nothing. His calm mask had finally cracked. Anne Brielle. Harlan looked at his elder daughter. My beautiful, shallow daughter who cares about nothing except appearances and social media. When was the last time you did anything meaningful with your life? When was the last time you helped anyone besides yourself? Brielle was crying openly now. I tried to make you proud by posting pictures of yourself on the internet, Harlan asked coldly. By spending my money on designer clothes and jewelry, that's your contribution to the world. You never told me what you wanted from me. Brielle sobbed. Nothing I did was ever good enough for you. The room erupted into shouting. Everyone was yelling at once, years of buried feelings exploding into the open. Enough. Mr. Whitaker's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone stopped and looked at him. This is getting us nowhere, Mr. Whitaker said firmly. Harlan, should we proceed with the will? Harlan took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Yes. Let's finish this. He sat down, suddenly looking very tired and very old. Serena sat beside him, still holding his hand. Mr. Whitaker picked up the will again. Given what has transpired, Mr. Whitaker read, Harlan Kingsley has made the following decisions regarding his estate. Everyone leaned forward, tense and afraid. Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat and continued reading. To my wife, Vivian Kingsley, you married me for money and status, not love. You have shown me no genuine affection or partnership in over 20 years. Therefore, I leave you the house in the suburbs, the one you always said was too small and ordinary. It's worth approximately $2 million. You'll also receive $50,000 per year for the rest of your life. Enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. The prenuptial agreement you signed ensures you cannot contest this. Vivian gasped. $2 million? That's nothing compared to. Be quiet and listen, Harlan said coldly. Mr. Whitaker continued, To my son, Quentin Kingsley, you have shown laziness, entitlement, and cruelty. You celebrated my death with joy. You called me the old man like I was your enemy, not your father. Therefore, I leave you $1 million in a trust fund. You will receive $20,000 per year until the money runs out. You will not receive any shares in my company. You will not receive any property beyond what you've already been given. Quentin's face turned purple with rage. $1 million. I'm your firstborn son. The company should be mine. You don't deserve it, Harlan said simply. To my son, Preston Kingsley, Mr. Whitaker continued reading, who stole from me while smiling to my face. I leave you nothing. Your theft from the company totaled over $300,000. I could have you arrested. Instead, I'm simply cutting you off completely. You'll have to make your own way in the world like I did. Preston stood up, his face a mask of rage. You can't do this. I'll fight this will. I'll take you to court. Try it, Harlan said calmly. I have evidence of your theft. Mr. Whitaker has copies. You take me to court, and I'll have you arrested for embezzlement. Your choice. Preston sat back down defeated. To my daughter, Brielle Kingsley, Mr. Whitaker read, who cared more about texting her friends than mourning her father. I leave you $500,000 in a trust, $20,000 per year for 25 years. No more. You'll have to learn to live within your means, and perhaps, finally, grow up. Brielle sobbed into her hands. And finally, Mr. Whitaker said, his voice softening to my daughter, Serena Kingsley. Everyone looked at Serena, who sat quietly beside her father, tears streaming down her face. Serena, Mr. Whitaker read, you are the only one who truly loved me, the only one who mourned me, the only one who saw me as a person, not a bank account. Therefore, I leave you everything else. The room exploded. What? Quentin roared. You can't be serious. Vivian screamed. She's the youngest. Brielle cried. Harlan held up his hand for silence. Surprisingly, they all went quiet, perhaps out of habit from years of obeying him. Serena, Harlan said gently, turning to his youngest daughter, I'm leaving you controlling shares of all my companies, the mansion, the properties, the investments, everything. It's worth approximately $8 billion. Serena's eyes went wide. Dad, I don't want it. I know you don't want it for yourself, Harlan said softly. That's exactly why you should have it. You're the only one I trust to use it wisely to help people, to continue my legacy in a good way, not a greedy way. But I don't know how to run a company, Serena protested. You'll learn, Harlan said, and I'll teach you. I'm not dead, Serena. I'm very much alive, and I plan to spend the next years of my life teaching you everything I know. We'll run the company together until you're ready to do it yourself. He stood up and faced the rest of his family. All of you are still my family, Harlan said. I can't change that. And despite everything, I still love you. But I don't trust you. I don't respect you, and I will not reward your greed and cruelty. This isn't fair. Quentin was shaking with rage. Fair. Harlan's eyes blazed. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I worked 70 hours a week for 50 years to build something for you? Is it fair that I sacrificed time, health, relationships, everything to give you opportunities. Is it fair that you repaid me with hatred and impatience for me to die? You walked to the door, then turned back. You all have enough money to live comfortably if you're smart about it. That's more than I had when I started. If you want more, do what I did. Work for it. Build it yourself. Earn it. Father, please, Brielle started. But Harlan had already left the room, Serena at his side. Behind them, the family sat in shocked silence. Their dreams of instant billions shattered. The test was over, and they had failed. 3 months had passed since that terrible morning in the living room. The mansion felt different now, quieter, emptier, but somehow it also felt more peaceful. Vivian had moved out within a week. She took her $2 million and the small house in the suburbs that Harlan had given her. She hired lawyers to try to fight the will, but the prenuptial agreement she had signed was ironclad. Eventually, she gave up and disappeared from their lives. Some people said she moved to another city and married another wealthy man. Harlan didn't care enough to find out. Quentin had also left, furious and bitter. He took his $1 million and tried to start another business, some kind of tech company that he claimed would make him a billionaire. Harlan heard through business contacts that it was already failing. Quentin had burned through half his money in just 3 months, living in an expensive apartment and throwing parties to impress people who didn't really care about him. Preston was the most dangerous. He had threatened to sue, threatened to go to the media, threatened to destroy Harlan's reputation. But when Mr. Whitaker showed him the evidence of his theft, bank records, transfer receipts, everything, Preston knew he was beaten. He left the city entirely. No one knew where he went. Harlan suspected he was hiding somewhere, plotting revenge. But Harlan wasn't worried. He had survived much worse than Preston. Brielle had surprised everyone. After taking her $500,000, she had actually done something smart. She moved to a smaller apartment, got a real job at a fashion company, and started using her social media for good, promoting small businesses and charity work instead of just posting pictures of herself. She called Serena once a week, trying to rebuild their relationship. Serena was slowly, carefully learning to forgive her sister. But the biggest change was in the mansion itself. Harlan and Serena now lived there together, along with a few loyal servants like old Alfred the butler. Every morning they had breakfast together in the small breakfast room, not the huge formal dining room. They talked about real things, books, ideas, the world, the company. Harlan was teaching Serena everything about business. She was a quick learner, much smarter than he had ever realized. She had ideas, good ideas about how to run the company better, how to treat employees fairly, how to use their money to help communities. "Dad," Serena said one morning over coffee, "I've been thinking. We have so much money, more than we could ever spend. What if we started a foundation to help kids go to college who can't afford it, especially kids whose parents died or left them like Mom died and left me?" Harlan looked at his daughter with pride swelling in his chest. "That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart. Your mother would have loved it." Serena smiled. "We could call it the Lydia Kingsley Memorial Foundation. After Mom." "Perfect," Harlan said softly. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You have your mother's heart, kind and generous and full of love. I have your strength too," Serena said. "You taught me that. Even when this whole thing hurt you so badly, you didn't just give up. You stood up for yourself. You demanded respect." Harlan nodded slowly. "I spent so many years being afraid to see the truth, afraid to admit that my family didn't love me. But pretending doesn't make things better. The truth, even when it hurts, is always better than a lie." Do you think they'll ever change? Serena asked quietly. Quentin, Preston, Brielle, Vivian. Harlan thought about this for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe losing everything will teach them something. Maybe they'll learn what I had to learn. That money can't buy love, and that real happiness comes from giving, not taking. Do you miss them? Serena asked. Sometimes, Harlan admitted. I miss who I hoped they would be, but I don't miss who they actually are. Does that make sense? Yes. Serena said it makes perfect sense. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next